You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean...
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the resistance. It is Tuesday, November 13th. Dean Obeidallah, MBFF. I'm on Twitter, of course, at Dean Obeidallah. You can watch this show live streaming on Facebook, facebook.com/DeanOfRadio, or drop me an email, dean@deanofradio.com. 721. What do you think that number means? 721. That's the number of days until the most important election of our lives. November 3rd, 2020. I won't count it down every day from now to then. That will be annoying. But once in a while, I'll remind us. Once we get closer, of course, we'll do the daily countdown. But it's 721 days, and we know, I don't have to tell you why. You know why if you're listening to this show. A lot to cover today, from North Korea to the recount to racism in Mississippi Senate race, which has got to be covered. That needs even more coverage. But first, a little humor. Here's Stephen Colbert last night. And this is actually reading a real tweet from Donald Trump and his reaction to the horrific, deadly fires, which are now the worst fires in the most deadly fires in the history of California. Let's hear Colbert from last night. Clip 1, please.
The Golden State is being ravaged by 3 deadly wildfires in Malibu and Northern California. There's been a tragic loss of life and an unprecedented loss of property. And we certainly hope everybody there stays safe, including and especially the firefighters who are fighting this on the front line. And at a time like this, it is hard to know the right thing to say. But for the wrong thing to say, let's check the president's Twitter feed. There is no reason for these massive, deadly, and costly forest fires in California except that forest management is so poor. Billions of dollars are given each year with so many lives lost, all because of gross mismanagement of the forests. Remedy now or no more Fed payments. I think that's called blaming the victim. I'd hate to be choking with only Trump there to save me. Are you choking? There's no reason for this massive loss of oxygen except your chewing management was so poor. Remedy now or no Heimlich, okay?
Unreal. Donald Trump blaming the people in California. Donald Trump lashing out apparently in the White House, going crazy. And then here, another quick joke before we get into the serious stuff. Last night, Trevor Noah on The Daily Show calling out Donald Trump's lies about knowing Matthew Whitaker, the acting AG. And it's just priceless. But I think Trevor's got a really good take on it. Let's hear clip number 2.
And the controversy has forced Trump into one of his most blatant lies ever.
With his pick for acting attorney general under fire, President Trump is defending his choice while also seeming to distance himself from the new man overseeing Mueller.
I don't know Matt Whitaker. Matt Whitaker worked for Jeff Sessions, and he was always extremely highly thought of, and he still is. But I didn't know Matt Whitaker.
But that's not what he told Fox News a month ago.
I can tell you Matt Whitaker's a great guy. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker.
You know, sometimes Trump lies so hard, he gives my brain whiplash. I mean, at this point, you just gotta laugh when Trump contradicts himself. He's like Newton's third law. For every Trump, there is an equal and opposite Trump.
Funny stuff there from Trevor Noah calling it out. I love that the young people in the audience were laughing before the punchline even landed because they saw Donald Trump, the clip where he goes, I don't know the guy. And then they show a few months earlier on Fox News, great guy. What a charade. What a joke. That's the leader of the Republican Party, folks. And let's talk about something else. Donald Trump is certainly trafficked in racism and bigotry and sexism, of course. And we are seeing so far some racism in a Mississippi U.S. Senate race that's going on. And it's getting a little coverage. It deserves a lot more press. I wish it were trying to get the Democrat Mike Espy on this show. But if you don't follow this, what happens is in Mississippi, if you don't get 50%, there's a runoff. And in this case, Thad Cochran had retired, the Republican senator who'd been there. And the governor, Phil Bryant, appointed Cindy Hyde Smith, who had been the state's commissioner of agriculture, to the position of the U.S. Senate in April. Well, we just had an election, of course, last week, a week ago tonight. Can you believe it? We had our election. Feels like months ago. And it was really close, but no one got 50%. So the runoff is November 27th between the two. Mike Espy, His name probably sounds familiar to a lot of people. In 1986, he was the first African American from Mississippi ever elected to the House of Representatives since Reconstruction, folks. Okay? Yeah, there's not a racial issue down there. The first time a black person was elected since Reconstruction in Mississippi was 1986. And later, Mike Espy was appointed to Bill Clinton's cabinet as the Secretary of Agriculture, so his name probably sounds familiar for people from that more than running for office. Well, in the election last week was actually very close. Cindy Hyde-Smith, the incumbent Republican, got 41.5%. Mike Espy got 40.6%. And then Chris McDaniel, a really right-wing Tea Party racist guy, got 16% of the vote. So now it's just between Hyde-Smith and Mike Espy coming up November 27th. And so they're in a close race, clearly. And what has happened in close races when there's a white politician and the other one's black? We saw it in Florida. Accidental racism. We'll just call it accidental racism, or maybe casual racism is the correct term. But we're seeing it right here. And in this case, it harkens to a very, very dark period of time. Because with Ron DeSantis and Andrew Gillum, we remember Ron DeSantis day one of the campaign saying we shouldn't monkey this up. But what Cindy Hyde-Smith conjured up was far worse. And we'll play a clip. There's a train whistle going on in the actual clip, and I'll explain what she said in case you can't hear it. But she's a small gathering in Mississippi. This is a week ago in Tupelo, Mississippi, the birthplace of Elvis Presley. I've actually been there because it's also where the American Family Association is based, a hate group. We went in there with cameras when I was making The Muslims Are Coming to try to get them on camera, and we did actually. In any event, she's at this small gathering, and Colin Hutchinson, a local cattle rancher, is there. He organized it and praised her. And here is her response, Cindy Hyde-Smith, a Republican, to being praised by Colin Hutchinson and her expression of how much she loves Colin and what she would do anything to be with Colin Hutchinson. And let's hear her choice of words, clip number 3.
I would fight a certain song for me if he invited me to a public hanging at me on the front row.
If you couldn't hear it, I will tell you what she said. She said, if he, speaking of Colin Hutchinson, again, this is the Republican, incumbent Republican senator, U.S. senator, who's now running against Mike Espy, said, if Colin invited me to a public hanging, I'd be on the front row. If he invited me to a public hanging, I'd be on the front row. And listen to the laughter and cheers. And of course, everyone in the footage is white. I guess at the Klan rally, that would be really funny for people. I'm not really sure where else. As a local press in Mississippi noted, and I think it's so important to give the context here. And Cindy Hyde-Smith, I can't tell her age. She's an older white woman. Not old, but older. 50s, 60s, something like that. As a local press in Mississippi noted, Mississippi has a well-known history of, in the past, not now, of allowing white mobs to commit lynchings of black people. And in fact, no state saw more lynchings than Mississippi, according to a comprehensive report of the Equal Justice Initiative. In Mississippi, 654 reported lynchings were conducted over the years by angry white mobs of black people who were not charged with a crime, just accused of something like being black. As the report noted, this is actually in the report, so it's not provocative on purpose, it's provocative because it's the facts. As the report by the Equal Justice Initiative notes, at these often festive community gatherings, large crowds of whites watched and participated in the black victims' prolonged torture, mutilation, dismemberment, and burning at the stake. According to the NAACP, 4,740 lynchings occurred in the United States between 1882 and 1968. Nearly 73% of the victims were black, and Mississippi had 581 in that time period. And as African-American author Jesmyn Ward recently noted in an article for The Atlantic, racism is built into the very bones of Mississippi. So with that history, if you're a Republican, Cindy Hyde-Smith, and you say, if he invited me to a public hanging, I'd be in the front row. If you made a mistake, it was just a horrible choice of words, the correct response is to say, hey, I'm sorry. I apologize to those who were offended. It was my choice of words. I did not intend to be racist in any way. Or, that harkens to a very dark time in our history, and I didn't mean it in that context. Something like that, right? That's what you would say if you did not mean it to be racist. But here is the statement of Cindy Hyde-Smith. I'll read it. Here's the entire statement. In a comment on November 2nd, I referred to accepting an invitation to a speaking engagement. In referencing the one who invited me, I used an exaggerated expression of regard. And any attempt to turn this into a negative connotation is ridiculous. Where's the sorry for bringing up something that dealt with lynching? I didn't see that in there. And this is bizarre. She says, I use an exaggerated expression of regard. So to her, in her normal lexicon of words, if she's really happy that someone invited her, she'd say something like, I'd be there if he invited me to a public hanging. That's her idea of like just casual conversation with people. And it's outrageous. Now it gets worse, actually. So then she was asked by reporters 2 days ago, and I'm going to play this clip. This is her response. This is in real time. This is not me cutting together. This is one reporter after the other asking her a question like, will you expand on that statement? What I just read you was the entire statement. There was no, I'm sorry. There was no, I didn't mean to offend anyone. Or, of course, I was not invoking lynchings, and that's horrific. Instead, any attempt to turn this into a negative connotation is ridiculous. And here is her response, question after question after question. A reporter, again, this is not edited. This is not cut. This is real time. And you listen to her tone. Here's clip number 4.
We put out a statement yesterday, and we stand by that statement.
Could you expand on it then, why you said it, what you meant by it, and why people in the state should not see it as offensive?
We put out the statement yesterday, and it's available, and we stand by that statement.
Senator, are you familiar with Mississippi's history of lynchings?
I put out a statement yesterday, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Governor
You mentioned that it shouldn't be viewed with a negative connotation. Could you at least explain how it could be
yesterday, and we stand by the statement, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Is that phrasing in your everyday lingo, in your vocabulary?
I put out a statement yesterday.
Again, that wasn't edited. That was literally in real time. And the glibness and the arrogance of her response. I put out a statement yesterday, and that's all you're going to get. How dare you? How dare you question the owner of this plantation? That's what it felt like to me. And then it went on. Then the governor who was there, she was at a press conference. It was her, the governor, and someone else. The governor was asked about this right there, right in front of her, because he appointed her. And let's hear Governor Phil Bryant's response as he white-splains to us what she meant. Here's clip 5.
Governor, you appointed her as a United States Senator. You have a huge black population that are looking for answers on why she used that kind of language. And you have worked to try to make it known that Mississippi no longer has that pattern. When you're hearing her say, I put out a statement yesterday, and that's all
I think she is, she's certainly addressing the fact that she has put out a statement. I can tell you all of us in public life have said things on occasion that we could have phrased better. When you make as many speeches as we do in public life, that does occur. But I know this woman and I know her heart. I knew it when I appointed her. I know it now. She meant no offense by that statement. There was nothing in her heart of ill will. Now, in a political campaign, people can make anything you say what they want it to say. They can spin it. They can go on social media and accuse you of all sorts of things.
So there is some white-splaining that just because she said public hanging in the state that has the worst history in the nation, the worst, not top 10, the worst history of lynching black people. And so she happened to say public hanging. Come on, how dare you take it out of context? What's wrong with you people? Because she's talking about public lynching, hanging. It's unreal. And by the way, at that press conference, there were no black leaders there. There was no one there to say to her, you know, I know this woman, and she simply misspoke. That would be different. Nope. And in fact, the comments of the governor were far better than the comments of Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. In that he was saying, you know, she didn't mean anything bad or anything, but she refused to say that. Now, Mike Espy, the Democrats running against her, former congressman who's African-American, said her comments were reprehensible. He added, they have no place in our political discourse in Mississippi or our country. We need leaders, not dividers. And her words show that she lacks the understanding and judgment to represent the people of our state. Well said by Mike Espy, who we're trying to get on the show. Can Mike Espy win? Well, there's been no senator elected from Mississippi since Reconstruction who's black. The black population, though, in the state is 37%. That is the highest percentage of any state of a black population. It's also Mississippi, Biloxi, Mississippi, is the home of the Jefferson Davis Presidential Library and Museum, which honors the late head of the Confederacy. A nation built on, as the Vice President of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, says, and I love to read this to when right-wingers call up and say the Confederacy was not about slavery or white supremacy, I read this statement. This was literally from the speech of the Jefferson Davis vice president, Alexander Stephens, who gave a famous speech called the Cornerstone Speech, where he explained the cornerstone of the Confederacy. Yes, the one being honored in Mississippi and Biloxi. He said, I'll read one line about the Confederacy. He goes, its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race is his natural and normal condition. The words of the Vice President of the Confederacy, known as and it goes on and on and on. I don't read more because it's vile and despicable. Look, first of all, we need to help Mike Espy win. Go to espyforsenate.com, ESPY for Senate.com. If you can make a donation, if you can volunteer, November 27th, between him and a woman who talked about public hanging. That's a big thing. Second, I ask you, where are the Republican leaders talking about this issue and denouncing it? Not even the governor who stood next to her would not denounce the comment. We don't hear them. And same thing happened a week ago when Stephen King, the congressman from Iowa, who was a white supremacist piece of garbage, called immigrants dirt in a recording that came out. He recently retweeted Nazi sympathizers, back far-right politicians in foreign elections, including an open white nationalist. And one Republican, Steve Stivers of Ohio, the chairman of the National Republican Committee, had slammed Steve King on Twitter when these statements came out. And what we hear privately is that this congressman, Steve Stivers, not Steve King, got pushback from Republicans. And I watched a panel today of pundits, well-intentioned pundits on cable news. I'm not calling out any channel. That's not what it's about. You'll see the same discussion on channel after channel. And they sit there and they go, it's so unfortunate because they were talking about Cindy Hyde-Smith and her public hanging comment. And why don't we hear Republicans come out? And they're saying, well, it's so close to election, they don't want to put a damper on the Republican energy in Mississippi because you don't want to make the base go like, oh my God, you're coming out against public hanging, or you're trying to, or it's PC, you're making this PC and it's not what she meant. All this garbage, right? What we don't hear them is tell the truth of what my truth is. Here's my truth, and I'd love to hear what you think. Republican leaders do not come out against Steve King when he calls immigrants dirt, and don't come out against this woman, Cindy Hyde-Smith, when she has public lynchings, or against Ron DeSantis when he's monkey up, and even worse stuff by those on the right, not because they fear their base, but because they agree with it. And I think that's the reality we have to come to terms with in this country, that Republican leaders who don't speak out agree with this. And you might say that's unfair. Well, I don't care that's unfair. And I'll say this because I'm Muslim American. And for years, these same right-wingers would demonize my community and even me. I could care less, but me by occasion. How come I'm not speaking out against the radicals in my community, against the ISIS and Al-Qaedas? And we did more and more of that. And partly we were not in the media. We could not get into the media. And that's why I'm so grateful that SiriusXM gives me this show. And I get to write for Daily Beast and CNN and other places. And now there are more Muslims. But a few years ago, it was like me. I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. And that we're able to tell our story, that we denounce them. Well, I call them to the same standard they held me in my community. If you do not denounce these people, Cindy Hyde-Smith, Steve King, Donald Trump, and the list goes on, you are complicit. Or I think we can assume they agree with white supremacy. And I know you're going to go like, well, it's a horrible blanket statement. That's unfair. Well, there's an easy remedy. Just come out and say it's horrible. It's wrong. It's despicable. I want nothing to do with this. When Donald Trump has said the most egregious garbage, the most racist stuff, you would see a handful of Republicans come out and denounce him. Literally, we've talked about it on the show. At times I've added it together, 20 members of Congress out of almost 250 in the Republican, between the Senate and the House would come out. Where are the rest? Are we to expect that they're all cowards? They're fearful of their base? That they're not really leaders? Or the reality is they agree with this. They have no problem with white supremacy because they are about white supremacy. And I think it's time we call that out. And if they push back hard to go, that's wrong, and they start denouncing it, then I'll say, I was wrong. And I'd be so happy to be wrong. But I don't think I am. I think this is the world we live in. I don't think it's time for any more kind of mealy-mouthness, any kind of milquetoastness, any kind of middle way. This is white supremacy. We're seeing it in front of us. Donald Trump is a white supremacist leader. And again, it's not burning crosses on lawns white supremacy. It's a different type, which is anti-brown immigrant. It's keeping black people in their place, calling them low IQ and unintelligent like Donald Trump has done over and over. That's what this is about. So, look, let's take a break. I want to hear from you. We got some great guests coming up. Gordon Chang at the top of the next hour, talk about North Korea, the breaking news yesterday that there's no sites. And I want to talk about substantive things now that we're away from the election cycle. And then Karine Jean-Pierre will come on in the third hour, who's great. We'll take a lot of calls, though. 866-997-4748. Be right back after this. Progressive values are the best of American values, and we need to keep fighting for them to save our country.
Don't go anywhere. This is the Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.